Looking back now at these 14 books, and Money does feel like a pivotal novel in that before that you were writing the kind of length of books your father had written, 230, 240 pages, social comedies, really. And then there is a step up. It's a much bigger book, Money, and something does happen with Money, I think.
I had the worst attack of writer's angst about it when I loved writing it. It was 3 years. And then I began the routine of reading it through before delivering it to my agent. And usually that took a day. This one took 2 days, 2.5 days. And I read it in an absolute sepsis of horror that what I'd done. And what I'd done, it became clear, was put all the eggs into the basket of voice with nothing else. And if the voice didn't work, then it was a disaster. And the voice seemed to me not to work. But I took it in, I delivered it. A few pages I rewrote in, sweating with shame. And I delivered it and expected a white van to pull up outside my flat and white-coated operatives to fan out over the property to take me in, to section me. But it didn't turn out that way. But I was suddenly very sickeningly conscious of the gamble that I would never have sort of undertaken consciously, but I just found that that's what I'd done. And then suddenly a long novel became, a natural alternative to these well-behaved shorter novels. And it certainly was an expansion, and a cisatlantic expansion. It was to try and to bring to the English novel something of the sort of reckless energy of the Americans. There is only one way to get good at fighting. You have to do it a lot. The reason why most people are no good at fighting is that they do it so seldom, and in these days of high specialization, no one really expects to be good at anything unless they work out at it and put in some time. With violence, you have to keep your hand in. You have to have a repertoire. When I was a kid growing up in Trenton, New Jersey, and later on the streets of Pimlico, I learned these routines one by one. For instance, can you butt people, i.e. hit them in the face with your face, a very intimate form of fighting with tremendous power to appall and astonish. I took up butting when I was 10. After a while, after butting a few people, you try to hit them with your rug line, hit them in the nose, mouth, cheekbone. It doesn't much matter. I thought, yeah, I can butt people now. From then on, butting people was suddenly an option. Ditto with ball kneeing, shin kicking, and eye forking. They were all new ways of expressing frustration, fury, and fear, and of settling arguments in my favor.
It was also the first of your novels, I think, that your father absolutely could never have written, let alone read. He could never have written it. The earlier books, as we get further away, I think Rachel Papers and Lucky Jim are closer than they are far apart. But Money, you become entirely your own writer, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think the Rachel Papers and Lucky Jim are separated really just by generation, and if he'd been me and I'd been him, we would have written something very like each other's first novel. But the Money was different, and interestingly, Kingsley read the first chapter, quite a long 30-page chapter, in Granta, I think, sort of separate from the book. And he said, it's good. It's going to be longish, right? He said, and I said, yeah. And then he started to read it, and then the minute the Martin Amis character came in, then he sent it windmilling through the air, and that was the excuse. He needed to stop reading it. But I think you're right. It is. It's the novel where you, and most writers have such a novel where, certainly most American writers, where you stop being well-behaved and you stop having the sense that you're an apprentice.
Was it difficult, do you think, for your siblings, and this would not be in any way your fault, it would just be a fact, that they had Kingsley Amis and they had Martin Amis, and then they were trying to live as civilians, but with that name and those connections. I mean, what was that difficult for them, do you think?
Yeah, my brother said, I'm the son of a hardback and the brother of a paperback, he said. I think it probably is and was irritating. But I'm absolutely certain that my sister Sally never felt anything but, mild pleasure and interest. Certainly, with Kingsley, she worshipped Kingsley, and after he died, she had a little sort of shrine in her flat with books and mementos of his. And Kingsley unforgettably said, towards the end of his life, he said, what haunts his worst insomnias, he said to me, is that what Sally will do after I'm dead, in that there will be a great loss of raison d'etre. And she lived for another 5 years after he died. But if those two facts were at all connected, then that seems to be absolutely a tragic thing.
You talked about Sally's close relationship with Kingsley. Some people might think that you were very forgiving towards him, but your obvious love for your father and what you've said and written about him, it overcame his failure to read your books, the fact that in his published letters he refers to you as a little shit in a letter to Philip Larkin.
That's completely affectionate, the little shit. Admiring and affectionate. No, it's taken me a while to realize just how unusual it was to have a good relationship with your father during this time. And all my male friends were having battles with their fathers. And I'm absolutely convinced that it was because of the sexual revolution, in that, number one rule on the Revolutionary Manifesto was, very easy to understand, there will be sex before marriage. And all my male friends during this time were having that kind of struggle with their father. I didn't have a trace of it from him. He, in fact, slightly went too far the other way in his obvious approval of promiscuity in any form.
Although he gave you one of the most striking pieces of paternal advice I've ever heard, which was that he told you and your brother the sensations of sex are greatly enhanced by the feelings of love.
Yeah, and as Saul Bellow has written, it's an exceptionally smart man who can forget the sexual advice given to him by his father. It's with you all your life. But I mean, this is, again, slightly facetious, but my brother and I immediately started trying to fall in love to get better sex. And it was very good advice in that obviously true up to point, but it did make you seek love, and I think that was always the quest. It wasn't for numbers of women. It was trying to find one you loved and one you could be yourself with. That was the battle. Someone with whom you could be effortlessly yourself, and that is and always will be hard to do.
But one aspect of your relationship with your father, which I think is very unusual, he, as they would probably have said in Wales at the time when he was there, he suffered with his nerves and he had night terrors, and you would be led in as a child to calm him down.
He would be led into my room, and I never quite clear what it was about, although he did look rather odd, and these visits were usually preceded by screaming fits from the parental bedroom, really high-pitched, sort of desperate screaming, whinnying. And he described it to me later. He said it's depersonalization, that he used to wake up and not know that he was a person in some weird way. He was phobic, there's no doubt about it, all his life. He never drove, he never flew. He could not be in a house after dark alone, and not just anyone would do it. Have to be family or close friend. And he once hailed a cab in Newcastle and said, "Drive me to London," because he couldn't face